very pleased to have with us Congressman Mark Pocan, representing brilliantly the 2nd District of Wisconsin. His website, pocan.house.gov. Congressman, welcome back to the program.
Hey, thank you, Tom. Glad to be here.
You are a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and which is, or at one point in time, I recall, was the largest caucus in Washington, D.C. in Congress. It might be, what now, 2nd or 3rd? I'm not sure.
We're still the largest values-based caucus. So, there's the New Dems, which are the more moderate wing. There's the Blue Dogs, the more conservative wing. We have about 72 members right now, so we are the largest of the Democrats in Congress.
That is great. That is great. And every year, the Progressive Caucus comes out with a budget, which for the following fiscal year and the decade beyond. And you guys just came out with the People's Budget, Prosperity, Not Austerity, Invest in America. Tell us about it.
Sure. Well, what we always try to do is put a version of what we would really like to see happen in this country. And by putting that budget out, the best way to really display our values, but ultimately a lot of those values that we put out there get picked up then by House Democrats and become now the actual position of all Democrats. So we've done a really good job of doing that. We've done that with the financial transaction fee. Now we've done that with debt-free college as a proposal, which I did an amendment yesterday in committee on behalf of House Democrats for when we were marking up the budget. But our budget specifically is looking at reinvesting in America. We saw what austerity has done in places like Flint, Michigan, with the water. That's a classic example of the end result of austerity. So what we're doing is just the opposite. We have $1 trillion investment in our infrastructure, our roads and bridges, our waterworks, et cetera. In fact, there's $765 million specifically for Flint, but also money for other communities that are facing similar sort of things. Out of that and other initiatives we have, we create about 3.6 million jobs, good family-supporting wages. We do other things to help lift wages, like talk about protecting and increasing the ability to have collective bargaining rights, pay equity, and raising the minimum wage. We have a public option.
If I may interrupt you,
sure.
On the $1 trillion spending bill for infrastructure, is there anything analogous to that in the House Republican budget, the Paul Ryan budget, the one that they're actually pushing right now?
Absolutely not. In fact, you would have strangulation of any kind of funds that you could invest, because what they had to do in order to try to get the Tea Party, which it's still not, we're convinced that they're going to get the votes of the Tea Party, and we may have to have a continuing resolution. They actually doubled down on the sequester in the next year because we had a little relief from the sequester. So they're going right back and even harder. So what they're doing is, again, it's a pure austerity budget. We have exactly the 180-degree opposite.
Right. Okay, so as we go through this step by step, feel free to contrast it with
Sure.
what Paul Ryan and the Republicans in the House, who control the House of Representatives, which is where budgets have to originate, are proposing contra to you. So forgive my interruption. Back on track.
No problem. Education is another one, and let me talk about healthcare after that. Education, we have universal pre-K. We invest and fully fund K-12, and we have a debt-free college proposal and refinancing student loans all in there for higher education. So we really have much more of an investment into education across the board. In contrast, I think the Republican budget cuts just Pell Grants alone over the next decade would be cut. I think it's $200 million. This is from memory. We just had this debate yesterday on the floor. But there's all these other programs that get cut and not funded, especially when it comes to financial aid. We're doing just the opposite across the board, investing in those areas.
Wow.
Healthcare. We have a public option. We have funding for mental health. We have more things in communities when it comes to healthcare funding, and, of course, getting rid of things like the sequester and other things that cut existing lines of funding. They, don't be shocked, don't fall off your chair, Tom, but they repeal the Affordable Care Act and do a whole bunch of more things around that. So we have initiatives to try to get control of prescription drug prices. It's not just Martin Shkreli that we all focus on. It's companies like Pfizer, quite honestly, and other companies that are doing the exact same thing. We go after that. They don't address that in any substantive way. In fact, just the opposite through the measures that they would do around the Affordable Care Act. Basically, issue after issue, Tom, this is what we're seeing. We have public funding of elections. We have measures around criminal justice reform. We have measures around our energy policy. And this is a very much a prosperity budget that funds some of the investments that we make, through really a lot of the corporate tax breaks, through things like the financial transaction fee, things that really bring about fairness. So basically, that 1 or 2% that's benefited from the economy really in the last few years when everyone else has had wages flat, they're getting rid of the loopholes, just the loopholes that they have. We also have a little bit of adjustment for people who make a whole lot of money to pay a little more. But in general, the funding is closing loopholes and bringing us revenue that will benefit, I think, working Americans across the country.
So you're doing all this and you're paying for it.
Exactly. We pay for it, which is something that, ironically, although maybe not for those of us who follow it closely, the Republicans don't do. In that last omnibus budget we had in December, I think over 10 years there's something like $810 billion of tax expenditures unfunded that we did, of which about 65% go to corporations and wealthy individuals, not the average person. So they don't feel like you have to fund tax expenditures. We understand that that is something that falls on the balance sheet. We're living in the real world, not the Republican world, and that makes sure that we understand and we provide actual funding for programs that will benefit working families, so that if you're poor, we're going to try to help get you out of poverty. In middle class, we're going to try to make it so that you have more opportunities for your children. And if you're a senior, we're going to make sure that you have the respect and dignity you deserve in your retirement.
Yeah, remarkable. Have you run this by either the Clinton or the Sanders campaigns, and have you gotten any feedback from either one of them?
Not necessarily the budget. We have been working extensively with both of those campaigns and Martin O'Malley when he was still in the race on some of these priorities. So debt-free college, raising minimum wage, et cetera. We have tried to put those ideas out there, and quite honestly, Tom, we've been pretty successful in, by and large, many of the things. In fact, I would say the vast majority of things we've asked, they've included some version of with each candidate, and that was a big part of our goal, in the last year, really, is to make sure that whoever gets a nomination will have as progressive policies as possible. But one thing that I think is just important, and I sort of reiterate, is one of the big initiatives in the last budget was this debt-free college proposal. We worked with Demos on it, basically making sure that anyone who's smart enough and talented enough can't be held back from getting a higher education because they can't afford it. And we not only had good reception with presidential campaigns, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton both have slightly different but strong proposals around this. But the House Democrats yesterday, I made the motion for that in committee, and now that's the position of House Democrats in what we stood for. So that's moved really fast, but the idea started because the Progressive Caucus did work with our outside partners, put the idea out there, saw there was support, and now we're able to really, hopefully, bring it to fruition if we can get more Democrats elected. Do you think that our country is at an inflection point, and do you think that the Democratic Party specifically, I started the program out talking about, the kind of bipartisan neoliberal elite consensus, that managed decline with free trade and all this other kind of stuff that this is not an accident. Do you think that the Democratic Party might be on the verge of hitting a tipping point where it starts to repudiate some of the positions that have become conventional wisdom within the Democratic Party over the last 25 years or so? Well, I think things like trade are interesting, Tom, because it's one of the things that, I've worked on every week that I've been here, since I got elected. And, by and large, the elected Democrats are against things like TPP because it's not a good trade policy for working Americans. It'll send more jobs overseas. It'll depress our wages here. The problem has been usually at the White House level. Whoever gets elected seems to drink the Kool-Aid, and suddenly they become these free trade advocates as opposed to fair trade advocates. But I think one of the messages out of the campaign clearly has been just looking at not only the success Bernie Sanders has had, but the success that Donald Trump has had on a strong trade message, that we have to have better trade policy. Right. So, but, we need, I think if people really know how important that is to the American people, we are in a much better position in November. Yeah. Do you think, odds are that Hillary Clinton will be the nominee, although there's still a potential path to victory. Actually, there's several potential paths for victory for Bernie on the Democratic side. But certainly the conventional wisdom and the probability is that Hillary will be the nominee. Has she spoken out on this? Well, on trade, I think part of it, I try to do a little analysis on this, Tom, and I think because she's a lawyer, she speaks a little bit like a lawyer. So one of her statements around TPP is, I don't support TPP as it's currently written. And I've heard her talk informally to the Progressive Caucus and others about this, and what she's saying is unless you have good worker rights and environmental rights and other issues, she won't support it. But the problem is when you say a sentence like that that's qualified like that, you're not saying it as strong as you need to convince the American people that you're going to have their backs and you're going to protect their jobs. And, I think I would like to have her offer a more aspirational tone like Senator Sanders has, instead of the thought out but maybe not wordsmithed in the way that's convincing enough on trade. But in the conversations we've had, she has been solid on this issue.
Good. I mean, I would love to see her move in that direction because, frankly, if she is the nominee and if Donald Trump is the Republican nominee, that's going to be an area where, particularly among the middle class and the former middle class, it's going to be a real challenge. To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.